The man she chooses won't be the one who tries the hardest. He won't be the one who gave the most, explained the most, or loved the loudest. And that truth, it stings. You've been consistent, you've been loyal, you've done everything right. Yet somehow attraction fades. Someone else walks in and everything shifts effortlessly. This isn't luck, this isn't unfair, this is psychology. And by the end of this, you'll understand the 7 needs operating beneath her awareness, needs most men will never fulfill, but you will. Need 1, making her feel wanted, not just cared for. There's a reason she pulled away, even when you did everything right. You were loyal, you listened, you showed up, and still something faded. Not because you failed her, but because you missed something most men never even consider. Care and desire are not the same thing. Read that again. Care says, I'm here for you. Desire says, I choose you. One makes her feel safe, the other makes her feel alive. And safety without aliveness, that's comfort. That's routine. That's the slow death of attraction dressed up as a stable relationship. Think about it. You can care for someone out of obligation, habit, even guilt. But desire is chosen. It's electric. When a woman feels cared for, she knows she's supported. But when she feels wanted, truly wanted, she knows she's irreplaceable. She feels seen in a way that words alone cannot create. Most men flood a woman with reassurance. They over-explain their feelings. They text constantly. They hover. And they believe this effort proves love. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Effort without presence feels like pressure. It feels like need disguised as affection. And need suffocates attraction. Real desire doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't chase. It doesn't perform. Real desire is calm, grounded. It shows up in how you look at her, not glancing, but truly seeing. It lives in the pause before you respond, the steadiness in your voice, the way your attention rests on her without rushing to fill silence with words. When you notice the shift in her expression, when you catch the subtle change in her energy, when you remain present without reacting, that awareness lands differently. She feels it, not because you told her she matters, but because your presence proved it. Purposeful action carries more weight than 1,000 compliments. Guiding her gently through a space, adjusting your proximity naturally, making decisions with quiet certainty. These aren't grand gestures, they're signals. Signals that say, I'm not here because I need you, I'm here because I want you. And there's a critical distinction you must understand. Desire rooted in self-assurance feels magnetic. Desire rooted in insecurity feels heavy. One draws her closer, the other pushes her away, even when the words sound identical. So stop trying to convince her. Stop proving your value through endless availability. Let your presence speak. Let your groundedness communicate what words cannot. Allow her to feel noticed, chosen, and engaged, without pressure, without desperation, without performance. When desire exists this way, attraction stays alive. It breathes, it moves, it deepens, not because you forced it, but because you embodied something most men never will, the difference between caring for her and truly wanting her. Need 2, emotional rhythm and variation. You've been told that stability is everything. Be consistent, be reliable, be the rock she can depend on. And yes, there's truth in that. But here's what nobody warned you about. When you become emotionally identical every single day, something dangerous happens. You fade into the background. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped moving. Human beings are wired for movement. We notice what shifts. We remember what surprises us. Think about it. You don't notice the hum of the refrigerator until it suddenly stops. That's how emotional sameness works in relationships. When your presence becomes perfectly predictable, it stops being felt. You're there, but you're invisible. She knows exactly what you'll say, how you'll react, what mood you'll carry through the door. And slowly, without either of you realizing it, the spark dims. This doesn't mean you need to become unstable or chaotic. That's the opposite mistake, and it repels just as quickly. What creates attraction is rhythm, natural variation, the ability to shift between depth and lightness without forcing it. Some days you're playful, teasing, light on your feet. Other days you're focused, driven, locked into something meaningful. Both versions are real. Both versions are you. The key is letting these shifts exist without over-explaining or apologizing for them.
Most men make the mistake of performing the same emotional note constantly because they think it's what she wants. They suppress their intensity to seem easygoing, or they hide their playfulness to appear serious and mature. But flattening yourself doesn't create connection, it creates boredom, and boredom is where attraction goes to die. Here's the real secret. Deep conversations build connection, but constant seriousness builds weight. She needs to feel that being with you includes lightness, humor, and spontaneity, not as a mask, but as a genuine part of who you are. Contrast is what keeps her engaged. A spontaneous plan when she expected routine. A confident decision when she anticipated hesitation. An unexpected observation that makes her see something differently. These moments become emotional peaks. They stand out. They're remembered. When emotional rhythm exists naturally, curiosity stays alive. She doesn't know exactly what to expect, and that's not anxiety, that's excitement. Predictability feels safe, but it doesn't feel alive. Movement communicates vitality, and vitality is magnetic. So stop trying to be the same man every moment of every day. That's not strength, it's suppression. Let yourself breathe. Let your energy shift with life. When you allow natural variation to exist, you become someone worth paying attention to, not because you're performing, but because you're actually present, fully, dynamically, alive. Need 3. Independent thinking and intellectual presence. One of the fastest ways to watch attraction disappear is this: agreeing with everything she says. It feels safe, it feels polite, but over time it communicates something you never intended: absence. When you abandon your perspective just to keep the peace, you're not being kind, you're being invisible. Attraction isn't built on approval, it's built on presence, and presence requires that you actually exist with your own thoughts, your own views, your own way of seeing the world. The moment you start mirroring her opinions, nodding along to everything, reshaping yourself to match her preferences, you stop being a man she's drawn to. You become background noise. Now, independent thinking doesn't mean opposition. It doesn't mean arguing for the sake of it or proving her wrong at every turn. That's hostility dressed up in confidence. What it actually means is expression. The ability to calmly articulate what you believe without needing her to validate it, without shrinking when she disagrees, without abandoning your position the moment tension enters the room. Here's what happens when you respectfully hold your ground. First, it signals confidence. You're not afraid of disagreement. You can sit in that discomfort without crumbling. Second, it communicates independence. Your sense of self doesn't depend on alignment. You don't need her to agree with you to feel secure. Third, and this is crucial, it reveals identity. You're not a mirror. You're a man with depth, with edges, with something real to offer. Most men fear disagreement creates distance. They think if they challenge her, she'll pull away. But the opposite is true. Respectful challenge deepens interest. It stimulates curiosity. It creates mental engagement, and mental engagement strengthens emotional connection in ways that constant agreement never will. Think about it. A woman is rarely drawn to someone who simply reflects her thoughts back to her. That's not a conversation, that's an echo. She's drawn to someone who expands her perspective, someone who introduces ideas she hadn't considered, someone whose mind she wants to explore because there's actually something there to discover. The goal isn't to change her mind, it's to stand comfortably in your own. When you do that, When you express your views with calm certainty, without aggression, without desperation for approval, something shifts. Respect forms, and respect is the foundation attraction stands on. So stop performing agreement you don't feel. Stop swallowing your opinions to avoid friction. The friction isn't the problem. The absence of you is the problem. Speak your mind with composure. Let her disagree. Let the conversation breathe. Your presence becomes magnetic not when you match her perfectly, but when you show up as someone worth knowing, fully formed, grounded, and unshakable in who you are.
There's something that happens between two people that has nothing to do with words. You've felt it before, a moment where the air shifts, where silence suddenly carries weight, where eye contact becomes difficult to break. Most men spend their entire lives chasing attraction through conversation, through compliments, through proving their worth. And they miss this entirely, because this spark isn't created, it's revealed. It emerges not from what you say, but from how you exist in the space between words. Think about the interactions that felt flat, polite, friendly, safe. Everything was technically correct. You listened, you responded, you showed interest. Yet something was missing. The conversation ended, and she forgot your name by the next morning. Now, think about the rare moments when someone held your attention without trying. They weren't performing. They weren't chasing your approval. They were simply present, and that presence made you lean in. This is what most men never understand. They believe attraction is built through effort, through saying the right thing at the right time, through constant verbal affirmation, through filling every silence with noise. But attraction lives in stillness. It breathes in the pause before you respond. It deepens when your eyes remain steady instead of darting away. It grows when you allow a moment to stretch without rushing to fill it. Eye contact is the first element. Not staring, that creates pressure. Not avoiding, that signals fear. Calm, unhurried attention that communicates one thing: I see you. When she finishes speaking and you hold that gaze for just a moment longer before responding, something registers beneath her conscious awareness. She feels noticed, not evaluated, not hunted, noticed. Proximity matters more than most realize. Too much distance feels cold, disconnected. Too little feels invasive. But when you occupy space naturally, neither retreating nor advancing, comfort and awareness coexist. Your physical presence communicates confidence without demand. Your voice carries this energy too. A controlled, relaxed pace says more than rapid explanations ever could. Speaking slightly slower during moments that matter adds gravity to your words. And silence, comfortable silence, allows emotions to surface that constant talking would bury. Touch, when appropriate, amplifies everything. One deliberate gesture carries more impact than a dozen uncertain ones. The key isn't frequency, it's intention. When this quiet spark exists, she's no longer just listening, she's present with you. The interaction becomes memorable not because you impressed her, but because you allowed space for something real to emerge. Combined with intellectual depth and emotional rhythm, this subtle energy transforms ordinary conversation into genuine connection. Without it, you remain forgettable. With it, attraction strengthens on its own, naturally, inevitably, without force. She doesn't want to be your everything. And the moment she becomes it, the moment your world starts revolving around her reactions, her moods, her presence, something inside her quietly pulls away. Not because she's cruel, not because she doesn't care, but because attraction cannot survive where imbalance lives. Here's what most men get wrong. They believe that devotion means availability, that love means sacrifice. So they cancel plans, they abandon friendships, they reshape their entire existence just to be present whenever she needs them. And at first, yes, it feels flattering to her. She notices the effort, she appreciates the attention. But watch what happens over time. That flattery fades. What replaces it is something far more dangerous, a quiet sense that your presence is no longer a choice, it's a dependency. And dependency, no matter how well-intentioned, creates pressure. Pressure suffocates attraction. Think about this carefully.
When your emotional stability depends on how she responds to you, when her smile lifts you and her distance destroys you, you've handed over your power. She feels it, maybe not consciously, but instinctively. And instead of feeling loved, she feels burdened. She becomes responsible for your happiness. That weight isn't romantic, it's exhausting. Now consider the opposite, a man grounded in his own life, a man with purpose that existed before her and continues regardless of her presence. He pursues goals, he invests in growth, he maintains friendships, passions, interests that fulfill him independently. When he shows up, it's because he wants to, not because he needs to. His presence becomes meaningful precisely because it isn't guaranteed. This is where the shift happens. She stops feeling like she's being leaned on and starts feeling like she's being chosen. There's a profound difference between being needed for survival and being wanted for connection. One creates anxiety, the other creates desire.
And here's the part most miss entirely. Independence doesn't mean coldness. It doesn't mean withholding affection or playing games with distance. It means balance. You give fully when you're present, but you remain whole when you're apart. Your peace doesn't collapse because she's quiet. Your confidence doesn't crumble because she's distant. You remain steady because your foundation was never built on her reactions. When she senses this, when she realizes that you're okay without her, that your happiness doesn't hinge on her validation, something remarkable occurs. She relaxes. The pressure lifts. She's free to want you without feeling like your survival depends on it. And in that freedom, attraction grows naturally. Being okay without someone doesn't make you distant. It makes you grounded. And grounded energy, that feels safe. That feels confident. That feels like someone worth choosing again and again. Need 6. Quiet leadership and direction. Leadership has been misunderstood for generations. Most men believe it means dominance, raising your voice, controlling decisions, demanding respect. But the leadership that actually creates attraction, it's quiet, it's steady. It never announces itself. It's simply felt. Think about the men who naturally draw people toward them. They don't ask for permission before making decisions. They don't second-guess themselves out loud. They don't look around the room waiting for someone else to take charge. There's a certainty in how they move, how they speak, how they handle pressure. And that certainty, it creates something powerful. Safety. Not safety in the way most people think, not protection from danger. Emotional safety. The kind that allows a woman to exhale, to stop calculating, to trust that someone else can hold the weight when things get heavy. Now here's where most men get it wrong. They confuse hesitation with thoughtfulness. They believe that asking her opinion on every small decision shows respect, but constant hesitation doesn't communicate consideration, it communicates uncertainty. And uncertainty creates tension. She starts wondering if you can handle challenges, if you'll crumble when life gets difficult, if she'll have to carry the emotional load alone. Quiet leadership removes that burden entirely. It shows up in moments so small you might overlook them, choosing where to eat without overthinking, walking into a room with intention rather than apology, handling an unexpected problem with calm instead of panic. These aren't grand gestures, they're patterns, and patterns tell her everything she needs to know about who you are when it matters. Your body speaks before your words do, standing with your feet grounded, moving deliberately rather than nervously, speaking with a pace that says you're not rushing to prove anything. These signals communicate more than any explanation ever could. And boundaries? This is where leadership becomes magnetic. Knowing when to leave a situation that no longer serves you, knowing when to rest instead of pushing through exhaustion to impress someone, knowing when to act decisively without waiting for approval. These decisions don't require justification. They require presence. When leadership is subtle, it never feels controlling. It feels reassuring. It creates space for her to relax into her own expression, playfulness, vulnerability, trust. She's not managing the situation anymore. She's not carrying the emotional responsibility. She can simply be. This isn't about ego. It's not about being right or being in charge. It's about responsibility, the willingness to create stability without demanding recognition for it, to lead without needing applause. When you embody this, something shifts. She doesn't just respect you, she feels safe enough to fully invest. And that safety? It strengthens attraction at a level most men never access.
Number 7. Selective validation and self-respect. Most men believe that the more they give, the more they receive in return. Compliments, reassurance, constant approval. They pour it out endlessly, thinking this is how you make someone feel valued. But here's what nobody tells you. Validation that comes too easily stops being felt at all. Think about it. When someone praises everything you do, every word you speak, every choice you make, does it still mean something, or does it fade into background noise? The answer is obvious. Approval that's guaranteed becomes invisible. It no longer registers. And when your words no longer register, your presence starts to disappear with them. This is where most men lose ground without realizing it. They believe generosity with praise builds connection. In reality, it erodes respect. Not because kindness is wrong, but because indiscriminate approval signals something deeper. It signals that your standards don't exist, that your validation isn't earned, that you'll give the same response regardless of how she shows up. And when that becomes clear, something shifts. Your opinion stops carrying weight. Now consider the opposite. A man who notices what genuinely matters to him, who acknowledges effort, integrity, authenticity, but remains unmoved by superficial gestures or inconsistent behavior. When he speaks, it lands differently. His words feel real because they aren't scattered everywhere. They're selective. They're grounded in something true. This isn't about withholding affection or playing games. That approach creates distance, not desire. The balance lies in something more subtle, valuing your own time and energy and principles so clearly that others can sense it. When you refuse to reward disrespect with attention, when you don't lower your standards just to keep someone interested, you communicate something powerful without saying a word. You communicate self-respect. And here's what happens in response. She becomes more conscious of how she shows up around you, not from pressure, but from awareness. Your presence carries meaning. Your approval means something, precisely because it isn't automatic. This creates healthy tension, not anxiety, not uncertainty, just a quiet recognition that you're someone whose attention is worth earning. Men who give unlimited validation remove all challenge from the dynamic. Men who withhold completely feel cold and unreachable. Attraction lives in the space between, where appreciation is real but not guaranteed, where acknowledgement is warm but not desperate, where your words feel like gifts because they aren't thrown around carelessly. When you embody this, emotional investment deepens naturally. Respect becomes mutual rather than one-sided. You stop chasing approval and start standing in your own value. And from that place, grounded, clear, self-assured, you become someone whose validation actually transforms how she sees herself. That's power. Not the power to control, the power to matter. Everything you've just heard comes down to one truth. Attraction isn't built through effort. It's built through alignment, through becoming the kind of man whose presence speaks before his words do. You don't chase, you don't prove, you don't perform. You simply stand firmly in who you are. These 7 needs aren't strategies to memorize or techniques to rehearse. They're invitations to evolve, to carry yourself with calm certainty, to value your own time and energy so deeply that others feel it without explanation. When you embody these qualities, not as a mask but as your nature, something shifts.
Connection stops feeling forced, attraction becomes effortless, respect flows both ways. This isn't about becoming someone else, it's about removing everything that was never truly you, the doubt, the desperation, the endless need for approval. What remains is real confidence, quiet, grounded, unshakable. And that is what she's been searching for all along.